Peace, family. It's compost time. Oh, yeah. I got a problem. I got a strange addiction. Somebody help me. I need an intervention. It ain't alcohol or weed. There's just one thing that I need. I got an addiction to fruit trees. I got an addiction to fruit trees. I take a persimmon to breathe. Hey, the next one I'm getting got an addiction to fruit trees. All right, again, we out here working. Y'all got to know that I love y'all because you other content creators, you probably can, kind of agree with what I'm saying. Sometimes you get out in your yard and you're working and you might think to yourself, oh, this would be something cool to record, but you're so caught up in the work and you want to get it done that you just don't record a lot of the stuff that you do. I guess today I'm in one of those moods where I just feel like, let me go ahead and share it. So we're going to go ahead and do this compost video. Now, why am I doing a compost video? There's a lot of people that already have videos on composting. In my opinion, it doesn't have to be complicated. I'm just doing it because I want, to kind of keep you up to date with what's going on my end of things, and also to give you my thoughts on things and to show you how I'm doing the things that I'm doing. So, like I said, it doesn't have to be complicated. There's things that you need when you compost. You need carbon. That can be in the form of like dry leaves, cardboard, shredded paper. You need nitrogen, which can be in the form of like weeds, leaves, grass, food scraps. You need water, and then you also need oxygen. And that's pretty much it. And you build it up in layers, keep your layers moist, and that's pretty much it. Now, a bit about food scraps. If you're building a compost pile, what I would suggest is that you figure out a way to mask the smell of the food scraps, just because you don't want it to get overridden by rodents and things like that. But I'll show you what I'm doing to try to accomplish that. Let's take a look at it real quick. All right, so first of all, we got our ingredients. So for our carbon, we got these 2 bags here. Now this is leaves that I saved from last fall. I shredded them up in my lawnmower, put them in this plastic bag, watered them down, put holes in the bag to try to get them to break down some. Now, if you look at it, they still look like shredded leaves, but there's some not bacteria, but there's some fungi going on there. There's bacteria as well, but when you look at it closer, you can see that it's starting that breakdown process, which is what we want. We also got some broken down leaves that I got directly out of this little wooded area back here. I went under the top layer of leaves and found this broken down substance. It's pretty much compost. It's compost, broken down leaves, things like that. That's what we'll be using as well, because this is bacteria and fungal rich. Now, this little thing here, there's actually a lizard in here, one of those little skinks. Me and him were playing hide and go seek the other day, and he ran in here and went down into the pile. So if he pops out, don't be alarmed. I know he's in there, so he told me he was going to get me. So I mean, whatever. I guess it's on when we see each other. Carbon as well. This is more broken down. This is actually broken down tree material from a tree that fell back here. So that's fungal and bacteria rich as well. All of this is to kind of charge up the compost pile. If you don't have these things, it's not a big deal. Just do the leaves. Any one of those carbon materials that I named you can use. I'm just using other things that I have. All right. So here we have, I'm mowing my grass. So we got grass and weeds in here. We've got food scraps in here. And in this bag, we've got coffee grounds that I got. Shout out to Starbucks. Y'all don't sponsor me, but you should. I come there and I fight with y'all. not all the time, but sometimes, you know, sometimes some of the younger ones, you know, they don't know what's going on. So, but this is coffee, and this is one of the things that I'll be using to try to mask the smell of my food scraps. And I've got more food scraps as well, but this is what I'll be using today. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to layer it to where like the food scraps will be sitting on top of the carbon layer, but under that or over that, we'll put the carbon layer, we'll put coffee, a good amount of coffee grounds. Food scraps, we'll put more coffee grounds, we'll put another carbon layer, and then we'll put a nitrogen layer. And we'll you know, hopefully that'll mask the smell of those food scraps. So ideally, I'd have a functional tripod or an available little camera lady, but I have neither one right now. So I'm just gonna have to do this the best way that I can. The spot that I'll be making my pile is right here. This is where I made my pile last year. And if you look, there's little pieces of biochar here. And there's still there's a good amount of biochar and things here. So we can use that also. I've got some biochar that I'll also put in the pile. And, you know, yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started and we'll take a look at it. This is the first layer, nice thick carbon mat to go on the bottom. I'm actually watering it in right now. They say that your carbon pile should be at least 4 by 4, 4 by 4 by 4, I guess you can say. 4 feet wide, 4 feet long, and then at least 4 feet high. So we'll try to accomplish at least that with this layer. This is the leaves that came out of the bags. Listen, save your leaves. You know, sometimes like in the hotter months, it's harder to find carbon materials than it is to find nitrogen materials. Just like in the colder months, it's harder to find nitrogen materials than it is carbon materials. So save your leaves when you can, because when the spring comes and it's time to mow your grass and things like that, you can take those bagged leaves, you know, of course, put them through your lawnmower and use it for your compost pile. Now, when you wet up your layers, you want to wet it up really good. You know, not soak it to the point where, you know, it's just a sloshy mess, but you want to make sure that you get a good amount of water in. The reason is that the bacteria functions in a wet environment. You know, so if you give it moisture, you provide it with moisture, then it'll be able to do its job in breaking things down. So you want to make sure you water each layer in really well. All right, next layer is the nitrogen layer. This is the grass clippings. Now listen, I don't really deal with ratios like that. I just layer. The thing that I keep in mind though is when I'm putting grass clippings down, don't pile those up too thick, because you don't want it to get matted. Grass will mat easy. So I usually just put like sort of a thin layer down in between like nice thick layers of carbon material. That way you can keep oxygen, you know, getting in and through your pile. So this is a thin layer of grass clippings. I'm gonna water that in as well, and then we'll kind of repeat the process. All right, so we're at the coffee and food scrap layer at this time. I'm about to put a layer of coffee down. I just wanted to say real quick, the coffee filters, you can put them in your compost pile. I don't like putting them in my compost pile because they take a long time to break down, in my opinion. But I use these, like if I'm sheet mulching, if you don't have cardboard, these actually are pretty good at smothering out weeds. So, you know, just kind of keep that in mind as well. But we're gonna put the coffee down. Coffee is great as a nitrogen source. And like I said, we're gonna use it for that, but also to mask the smell of the food scraps that we have in here. So let me go ahead and do this, and then we'll take a look at it. so that's the food scrap layer. We're gonna cover this up with a good amount of coffee, and then we'll put another carbon layer on. Now with your food scraps, in here we've got, and you can't see it now, but we got a lot of banana peels. We've got asparagus stalks. We've got romaine lettuce stalks. We've got cabbage stalks. We got some eggshells in here as well. And now with your things like lettuce and cabbage and eggshells, that actually provides, it breaks down into water. So I mean, you don't necessarily have to like water this layer in really well. And I'm not gonna water too much here because like I said, I wanna cover it with coffee grounds. But when we cover that up with that carbon layer, then I'll put a good amount of water in. But we'll go ahead and continue, y'all. All right, this is the food scrap layer with the coffee grounds on top. I layered it on pretty thick because I wanna get it to the point where I can barely see it, because in my logic, if I can't see it, then hopefully they can't smell it. Also, coffee grounds are really good to put in your compost pile because worms love coffee grounds. They go nuts. I don't know if the coffee makes them hyper, but they get hyped up when you put coffee grounds in with like your worm bins and things like that. Or if you look in your compost piles and you have coffee grounds in there, the worms go nuts. So I know that coffee grounds is a grit material that actually helps them to digest their food. But they love coffee grounds, so I'm not worried about covering it up this thick. You know, actually, I think that this is a benefit. So we're gonna keep it moving, y'all. All right, we about to open top of those coffee grounds. We're gonna put this wooded material on that Mr. Lizard is hiding in. We're gonna use this on top of the coffee grounds. So let's go ahead and do that and see if Mr. Lizard pops out. Come on out, sir. Actually, I can't do this one-handed. I'm gonna go ahead and do it and I'll let you know if he comes out. All right, well, he didn't make an appearance. Maybe he's not there. Now this material is carbon rich. I mean, it's carbon heavy. And I know that a lot of people are kind of against that because, you know, carbon and wood material can tend to, you know, hold on to and capture nitrogen. You know, nitrogen actually helps to break down carbon. But carbon is like, you know, wood chips and branches and things like that. As they break down, they become spongy and they hold on to, you know, moisture as well as nitrogen. I'm not really worried about that because I'm gonna make this, first of all, this pile is gonna be going, I'm gonna be using this around my fruit trees and my shrubs as well. And they like carbon rich material, but also I'm gonna make this as carbon rich as possible. So I'll also be inoculating this pile with like comfrey tea, weed tea. I might actually get some 511 and, you know, mix that in with it as well. Like I said, we have biochar, that we'll be using also. And I'll be, you know, basically just be using it. I mean, I'm not really worried about that too much. And, you know, I will use this in the garden as well. I use it as a compost tea. And, you know, inoculate my garden with it also. So, yeah, but the thing is with this material, like I said, it came out the woods. If you look at it, it's already got like fungi working in here, you know, so that's actually going to be good for this pile anyway. So, you know, not too worried about it. Plus, these branches and things like that are in here will also provide oxygen for the pile, and that'll actually help it to break down. So I'm going to go ahead and keep it moving. All right, so if you look, we added the biochar. This is homemade biochar, made in VA by VA. It's basically charcoal that we have inoculated for probably it's been a few weeks at least, with some funk juice that we made, and I'll go over that as well. I think I have a video on one of the variations of funk juice that I make. But yeah, this is basically biochar. We're gonna lay this on top. You know, so in addition to the biochar being inoculated with the funk juice, which is nitrogen rich, it'll be inoculated with the nutrients and the bacteria and the fungi and the juicy goodness that'll come out of this compost pile. So we're gonna add this. I'm gonna cover this up. Now, a thing about coffee grounds as well, if you all ever decide to inoculate purposely your gardens or your growing spaces with mushrooms. You know, there's mushrooms that actually love coffee grounds. One in specific is the King Stropharia mushroom. If you ever get spores for the King Stropharia mushroom or the wine cap mushroom, which is a mushroom that it's good because it's edible for one, but also it's one mushroom that, you know, you can grow that, and once it gets acclimated to your area, it's there. It's there. So if you ever decide to look into that, they like coffee grounds. That's one of the things that they feed on. All right, so let's keep it moving. We're almost done, fam. All right, so on top of the biochar, we put a layer of nitrogen in the form of grass clippings and weed clippings. Now, the thing about biochar also, in addition to it being like an endless supply of nutrients, it also is like a permanent home to bacteria in your soil, so they'll, you know, have somewhere to reside at all times. But it also provides oxygen to your compost pile. It provides oxygen to your soil in general once you incorporate it. So look into biochar. You know, maybe I'll do a video on how I do it, and I'll do the very easy version for you. You know, and this will be good for people who, you know, may not have like a large property where they can make their own biochar. We'll get it. We'll do it. We'll do it. This is another bag leaf layer that I added with the rest of the forestry material that was in that container. Mr. Lizard didn't make an appearance. I'm assuming he found his way out when I wasn't looking. So it's all good. But this is the leaves from out of another bag. If you look at it, you can see where it's breaking down. And I mean, it's not fully, it wouldn't be considered fully, I guess you could say leaf mold, but it's leaf molding. And so this is good. This is good for your compost piles. So again, save your leaves, save your leaves. All right, so the pile is getting pretty high, which is good. This is what we want. I'm on my nitrogen layer now. I'm gonna go ahead and water that some. And then on top of that, I'm gonna put this bucket of broken down tree material. So between the broken down tree material, the food scraps, the leaf mold, all of that stuff, I mean, we're pretty much getting like a good amount of bacteria and fungi in here, which is, you know, this is what we need for compost. So we're gonna go ahead and do this. I'll go ahead and add this now. Look at that. See, I'm telling you, go to your local parks. You know, if you have woods behind your house or behind your apartment complex, go to your local parks, go to the wooded areas that you frequent. You know, if you like to work out in the park, which a lot of people do, you know, you may ride bikes or walk or jog or whatever, just kind of visit the wooded area and scratch up under the leaves and get you some of this, you know, this goodness here, man. You know, make a tea with it. You know, just sprinkle it in your garden beds. This is bacteria rich. It's got bacteria in it, and it's coming straight out of a forest. So we're gonna add that. You know, this will help to charge it. And I'm gonna go ahead and finish up with what I have, and then I'll come back when my pile is done for today. All right, so we're done for now. I've run out of carbon material for now, but I'm not worried about that because I have all of this that I have access to. So I'll mow some of that down and then put that on top. But this pile has reached about 4 feet. Now I want to kind of go over quickly a few questions that you may have, so that we can kind of address those as well. First of all, do I have to turn the pile? Now the answers that I give are based on my own experience. It's not based on anything else but what I've actually experienced. I've been composting for a long time. Even before I got on YouTube, I composted. I used to watch videos by a gentleman by the name of Will Allen. He had an organization called Growing Power. And he was a genius when it came to composting, when it came to worm farming. You know, even he got into hydroponics as well. Excuse that motorcycle if you can hear it. Y'all know I live where there's traffic, but So my answer to turning the compost is this. I think that if you can't turn it, then you just can't turn it. It'll still break down. It'll just take a long time. In my experience, the more often you turn it and keep it moist, not soaked, but moist, then the quicker it actually breaks down. But if you can't turn it, because there's been times where I've made piles and I just was not able to turn it, it still breaks down. It just takes a long time. Now, there's always the subject of like, you need to turn it, because if you don't turn it, your compost pile will become anaerobic as opposed to aerobic, meaning the bacteria that'll live in your compost pile, as long as there's moisture, the bacteria will be anaerobic bacteria, which are considered bad bacteria because they can cause pathogens and things like that. But if you turn it, it gives it access to oxygen, and then the bacteria that will dominate your pile will be aerobic. I think there's some truth to that, but I think that one of the things that you can do, like even if you're not able to turn it constantly, if you turn it, turn it good, make sure that it has moisture, that will introduce aerobic bacteria to it, and it'll keep the anaerobic bacteria from dominating it. Even if it's been a while since you've last turned your pile. So I would just say, turn it if you can, turn it when you can. For me, I'm like a lot of you, like my time is like very, very limited. Like my day starts at 2 a.m. You know what I mean? And I drive like an hour and some change to work. In the evenings, driving home from work, sometimes it can take an hour and a half, close to 2 hours. I work between 10 and 12 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week. So my time is like limited. When I do those 6-day stretches, Sunday comes and I have to remind myself that it's not Saturday, it's Sunday, and I'm like too beat to really do anything. So, you're not always gonna turn your pile, but when you can, just do it. If you can't, you just can't. You know what I mean? The other question, and I don't know I hope that answered your question. I guess the answer is just build your pile. Build your pile. And make sure that you've got moisture in there, but build your pile. The thing about the moisture is like bacteria, they live in moist environments. They live and they move and they breed in moisture. So if there's no moisture, you're not gonna have, bacteria, which is essential for breaking down that pile. The other thing is the more bacteria that you have, the more it attracts worms, because worms feed on bacteria. Now, the thing with anaerobic bacteria, and pathogens, one of the things that you want to keep in mind is like you have another safeguard really for pathogens, which is your worms. Worms can actually crush bacteria like E. coli and things like that in its gut. So worms act as a purification device for your soil and for your compost. So just keep moisture in there. If you can turn it, turn it. The other thing is, can you just keep adding stuff to your compost pile? The answer to that is absolutely. It'll slow down the overall breakdown of the pile to where like the whole thing is, it'll take the whole pile longer to completely break down. But you can do that, and in fact, if you find that your compost pile has stalled out, if there's a lack of moisture, you can add things like food scraps and water that'll, or coffee grounds that'll actually boost the bacterial activity. It'll boost that, that moisture requirement. And if you find on the other end of the spectrum that it's too wet, you can add carbon materials like dry leaves, shredded paper, things like that to kind of balance it out. So yeah, you can absolutely do that as well. I would say just build your piles, put as much variation in it in regards to like your food scraps, your weeds and herbs, your, even like your, the leftover material from your garden beds. Throw that in your compost pile. And, the more you have in there, the better. So that's pretty much it, yo. You can even do stuff like, for those of you that drink things like kefir or kombucha, if you want to pour a little in your pile just to give it some more bacteria, that'll give it more bacteria variation. You know what I mean? But, that's pretty much it. It's not complicated. Just add those materials in it and just make it happen. And for those of you who are able to, like I said, save your leaves. All right, y'all. Leave your comments in the description. and I'll get with you and see you in the next video. Peace. Hey, one last thing, y'all. If you happen to, because I mentioned that I ran out of carbon material, but I got a lot more grass and things like that to get through. So what do you do with that grass? Now listen, if you know that it's just grass growing, you can use that to mulch around your annuals. You can actually drop that around your perennials as well. And that'll act as a boost of nitrogen. If you know that it's just grass. Now, if you're like me and you've got weeds mixed in with the grass, then you want to not do that. I would put it, if you don't have carbon, you know, and you can build up an actual pile, just build up an actual pile of the grass. Just let it dry out, you know, for the next time you can use it for compost, or just let it dry out, because the thing is, like, you want to make sure that the weeds are dead, the weed seeds are dead, and then also once that grass dries out, you can kind of use it as a carbon material as well. So you essentially could make a pile with just grass, you know, if you use fresh grass and then that old grass, but you want to make sure that if you do that, that old grass is really dry. And you want to be careful with that because you don't want it to get matted, because it still will mat. But I would just save it, let it dry out. You know, another thing you can do is just let it completely dry to the point where you know there's no moisture in there, the weed seeds are dead, and then put that around your plants to use as a mulch, you know, to hold moisture as opposed to provide nitrogen. So if you have more grass, you know, just keep in mind that if it's just grass, you know, you can put it in your annual beds. But if it's grass and weeds, just make a pile and then, you know, use it for something else. Just wanted to throw that in real quick as well. All right, peace for real this time.